Most people move through their day surrounded by a constant stream of health information, yet they rarely stop to examine how they are receiving it. It arrives through social media feeds, short videos, news headlines, conversations, and advertisements, often packaged in a way that feels urgent, convincing, and easy to accept. Without even realizing it, individuals fall into a pattern of passive consumption, where they take in ideas without questioning their origin, their accuracy, or their relevance to their own lives. This habit doesn't develop overnight. It is built gradually through repetition, convenience, and the human tendency to trust what is presented confidently. When information is consumed passively, the mind operates on autopilot. It does not pause to analyze or compare, it simply absorbs. A person might hear about a new diet trend, a miracle supplement, or a quick health fix, and immediately assume it must be effective because it is popular or widely shared. The appearance of credibility, professional language, attractive visuals, or confident delivery creates an illusion of truth. Over time, this illusion becomes difficult to distinguish from reality, and people begin to rely on it as a guide for their decisions. This pattern is particularly dangerous because it removes the individual from the decision-making process. Instead of actively choosing what to believe, people allow external voices to shape their perceptions. They may not even notice that their beliefs are being influenced because the process feels natural and effortless. The brain prefers efficiency, and passive consumption offers exactly that: quick answers without the effort of critical thinking. However, this convenience comes at a cost, as it replaces depth with surface-level understanding. Another layer of the issue lies in repetition. When the same idea is encountered multiple times, it begins to feel true, regardless of whether it is supported by evidence. This psychological effect reinforces passive acceptance, making it even harder to question what is being presented. A person might see the same health claim repeated across different platforms and assume it must be accurate simply because it appears everywhere. In reality, repetition often reflects popularity rather than reliability. Passive consumption also thrives on emotional appeal. Health information is frequently tied to fear, hope, or urgency. Fear of illness, hope for quick results, or urgency to act before it is too late. These emotional triggers bypass rational thinking and encourage immediate acceptance. When emotions are involved, people are less likely to pause and evaluate the information critically. Instead, they react, and that reaction becomes the basis for their decisions. In addition, the fast-paced nature of modern life contributes to this pattern. People are constantly moving, multitasking, and managing responsibilities, leaving little time or energy to deeply analyze every piece of information they encounter. As a result, they default to quick judgments and assumptions. It becomes easier to accept something at face value than to investigate it thoroughly. Over time, this habit becomes automatic, shaping the way individuals interact with all types of information, not just health-related content. The consequences of passive consumption are subtle but significant. Decisions made without proper understanding can lead to confusion, inconsistency, and even harm. People may jump from one approach to another, following trends rather than principles, and never truly understanding what works for them. This creates a cycle of uncertainty where individuals feel overwhelmed by conflicting information and unsure of whom or what to trust. Breaking this pattern requires awareness. It begins with recognizing that not all information deserves immediate acceptance. The mind must shift from being a passive receiver to an active participant, questioning, analyzing, and reflecting on what is being presented. This does not mean rejecting everything, but rather approaching information with curiosity and discernment. By slowing down the process and engaging with information more intentionally, individuals can begin to separate what is credible from what is merely persuasive. Developing this awareness also involves understanding the difference between information and insight. Information is abundant and easily accessible, but insight requires effort, reflection, and a willingness to go deeper. Passive consumption keeps people at the surface, but active engagement allows them to explore the underlying principles and context behind what they are learning. This shift transforms the way information is processed, turning it from something that is simply received into something that is thoughtfully considered. As this mindset develops, individuals become more conscious of their choices. They start to notice patterns in the information they encounter, question inconsistencies, and seek out reliable sources. Instead of being influenced by every new trend or claim, they begin to build a foundation of understanding that guides their decisions. This foundation is not based on convenience or popularity, but on clarity and intention, allowing them to navigate the vast landscape of health information with greater confidence and control. One of the most subtle yet powerful traps people fall into is confusing authority with accuracy. Something that appears professional, polished, or widely accepted often carries an automatic sense of trust. A person sees a confident speaker, a well-designed graphic, or a bold claim presented with certainty, and the mind quickly concludes, this must be true. That conclusion is rarely questioned, not because the information has been verified, but because it feels credible. This feeling becomes the foundation of belief, even though it may have little to do with actual evidence or truth. Authority is often constructed through appearance and perception rather than substance. Titles, large followings, technical language, or even the setting in which information is delivered can create an impression of expertise. When people encounter someone who seems knowledgeable, they tend to lower their guard. They assume that the person has done the work, checked the facts, and reached valid conclusions. This assumption saves time and effort, but it also transfers responsibility away from the individual and places it entirely in the hands of someone else. The problem arises when authority is mistaken for infallibility. No matter how experienced or respected someone may appear, they are still capable of error, bias, or incomplete understanding. Health information, in particular, is complex and constantly evolving. What is considered accurate today may be revised tomorrow as new research emerges. When people rely solely on authority without examining the underlying evidence, they risk adopting ideas that may be outdated, oversimplified, or even incorrect. Another factor that strengthens this confusion is repetition within authoritative circles. When multiple experts or influential voices repeat the same message, it creates a sense of consensus. This perceived agreement can be very persuasive, leading individuals to believe that the information has been thoroughly validated. However, repetition does not guarantee accuracy. Sometimes ideas spread because they are appealing, easy to understand, or profitable, not because they are scientifically sound. Without critical examination, it becomes difficult to distinguish between widely accepted beliefs and well-supported truths. Language also plays a significant role in shaping perception. Technical terms, complex explanations, and confident delivery can make information sound more credible than it actually is. For many people, the presence of sophisticated language creates a barrier to questioning. They may feel that they lack the knowledge to challenge what is being said, so they accept it without fully understanding it. This creates a gap between perception and reality, where information is trusted not because it is clear, but because it appears advanced or authoritative. Emotional influence further complicates the issue. Authority figures often use storytelling, urgency, or promises of quick results to capture attention and build trust. When people feel inspired, reassured, or even slightly fearful, they are more likely to accept the message without scrutiny. The emotional connection strengthens the perception of credibility, making it harder to step back and evaluate the information objectively. In these moments, belief is driven more by feeling than by evidence. There is also a cultural tendency to seek guidance from those who appear to have answers. In a world filled with uncertainty, people naturally look for direction and clarity. Authority figures provide that sense of certainty, offering clear recommendations and confident statements. This can be comforting, but it can also discourage independent thinking. When individuals rely too heavily on external authority, they may lose the habit of questioning, analyzing, and forming their own conclusions. Over time, this pattern creates a dependency. Instead of developing the ability to evaluate information independently, people wait for someone else to tell them what is right. This dependency limits growth and understanding, as it prevents individuals from engaging deeply with the information they encounter. They become followers of opinions rather than seekers of truth, guided by perception rather than evidence. Shifting away from this mindset requires a conscious effort to separate how something looks from what it actually is. It involves asking deeper questions, looking beyond the surface, and examining the foundation of the information being presented. Who conducted the research? What evidence supports the claim? Are there alternative perspectives or conflicting findings? These questions create space for critical thinking, allowing individuals to move beyond automatic trust and toward informed judgment. Developing this awareness does not mean rejecting authority altogether, but rather placing it in the proper context. Authority can be a starting point, a source of insight or guidance, but it should not be the final determinant of truth. By combining respect for expertise with a commitment to verification, individuals can create a more balanced approach to information. This balance allows them to benefit from knowledge without surrendering their ability to think independently. As this shift takes place, the relationship with information begins to change. Instead of being impressed By presentation alone, individuals become more attentive to substance. They start to recognize the difference between confidence and correctness, between popularity and proof. This awareness strengthens their ability to navigate complex topics, making them less vulnerable to misinformation and more capable of making decisions based on clarity rather than. There comes a point where information, no matter how accurate or abundant, is no longer the defining factor in a person's health decisions. What truly begins to matter is the willingness to take responsibility. Without that shift, even the best knowledge remains unused or misapplied. Many people continue searching for the perfect answer, the ultimate guide, or the one expert who will tell them exactly what to do. In doing so, they unknowingly give away control over something that is deeply personal. Health is not a one-size-fits-all equation, and yet it is often treated as if it were, simply because it feels easier to follow than to think independently. Personal responsibility begins with recognizing that no one else experiences your body, your lifestyle, or your daily habits in the same way that you do. External advice can offer direction, but it cannot replace your awareness. When people rely entirely on outside opinions, they disconnect from their own signals. They stop observing how their body responds, how their energy fluctuates, or how their habits affect them over time. This disconnection creates a gap between action and understanding, where decisions are made based on general recommendations rather than personal relevance. One of the reasons this happens is because responsibility requires effort. It demands attention, reflection, and sometimes discomfort. It is much easier to follow a simple rule or trend than to question whether it truly applies to you. Responsibility asks you to slow down, to notice patterns, and to evaluate outcomes. It pushes you to move beyond surface-level answers and engage with the deeper aspects of your choices. For many, this level of engagement feels unfamiliar, even overwhelming, so they avoid it by defaulting to external guidance. Another challenge is the fear of making the wrong decision. When people depend on others, they can shift the burden of responsibility away from themselves. If something doesn't work, it is easier to blame the source of the advice rather than confront their own role in the decision. Taking responsibility removes that safety net. It means acknowledging that your choices, whether successful or not, are yours to own. While this can feel intimidating, it is also empowering because it places the ability to change directly in your hands. Responsibility also transforms the way information is used. Instead of accepting ideas as instructions, individuals begin to treat them as tools. They test, observe, and adapt based on their own experiences. This process creates a feedback loop where each decision provides insight that informs the next one. Over time, this builds a deeper understanding that cannot be gained through passive learning alone. It turns knowledge into something dynamic and personal rather than static and external. This shift requires a change in mindset. Rather than asking, "What should I do?" the question becomes, "What makes sense for me based on what I know and what I observe?" This subtle difference moves the focus from dependency to autonomy. It encourages individuals to engage with information critically, to compare different perspectives, and to make choices that align with their own context. It also fosters confidence, as decisions are no longer based solely on external validation, but on internal clarity. Consistency plays a crucial role in this process. Responsibility is not a one-time decision, it is an ongoing practice. It shows up in daily habits, in small choices, and in the willingness to stay attentive over time. It requires patience because meaningful understanding does not happen instantly. It develops gradually through repeated observation and reflection. This patience allows individuals to move beyond quick fixes and towards sustainable approaches that truly support their well-being. There is also a sense of ownership that comes with responsibility. When people take charge of their decisions, they become more invested in the outcomes. They are more likely to follow through, to adjust when necessary, and to remain committed to their goals. This ownership creates a stronger connection between intention and action, making it easier to maintain consistency even when challenges arise. It shifts the focus from external pressure to internal motivation, which is far more sustainable in the long run. At the same time, taking responsibility does not mean isolating oneself from reliable sources or ignoring expert guidance. It means integrating that guidance thoughtfully rather than accepting it blindly. It involves balancing external input with personal judgment, creating a more holistic approach to decision-making. This balance allows individuals to benefit from available knowledge while still maintaining control over how it is applied. As this approach becomes more natural, individuals begin to notice a change in how they interact with information. They become more selective, more intentional, and more aware of what influences their choices. They start to recognize patterns in their behavior, identify what works for them, and let go of what doesn't. This awareness creates a sense of clarity that is difficult to achieve through passive reliance on others alone. It strengthens their ability to navigate complex and often conflicting information with greater confidence and independence assumption. Information by itself holds very little power if it remains unprocessed. People often assume that simply reading, watching, or hearing something useful is enough to create change, but that assumption leads to a quiet form of stagnation. The mind collects facts, tips, and ideas, yet nothing truly shifts because the information never moves beyond the surface. It stays as scattered pieces rather than forming a clear, meaningful understanding. This gap between knowing and understanding is where many individuals get stuck, especially when it comes to health. When information is first encountered, it is often taken in at a superficial level. A person might remember a key point or a catchy phrase, but they rarely explore what it actually means in depth. Without reflection, information remains isolated, disconnected from real-life context. It becomes something that is recognized but not fully grasped. This is why people can repeat advice or share insights with others, yet struggle to apply those same ideas in their own lives. The knowledge exists, but it has not been internalized. Internalization requires active engagement. It means taking the time to think about what has been learned, to question it, and to relate it to personal experience. This process transforms information from something external into something personal. Instead of being just another idea, it becomes part of the way a person thinks and makes decisions. This shift is subtle but powerful because it changes the role of information from passive input to active guidance. One of the key elements in this transformation is reflection. Without reflection, information passes through the mind quickly, often replaced by the next piece of content. Reflection slows down this process, creating space to examine and connect ideas. It allows individuals to ask deeper questions. How does this apply to me? What does this mean in the context of my daily habits? What changes, if any, does this suggest? These questions turn information into insight, bridging the gap between theory and practice. Another important aspect is repetition with intention. Simply encountering the same idea multiple times is not enough. It must be revisited with awareness. Each time information is reconsidered, it can be understood at a deeper level. New connections are formed, and previous assumptions may be challenged or refined. This layered understanding builds over time, gradually turning simple concepts into well-developed perspectives. It is through this process that information gains depth and relevance. Application is where understanding truly takes shape. When individuals begin to use what they have learned, they move from abstract thinking to practical experience. This step is essential because it reveals how information functions in real situations. Not every idea will work as expected, and that is part of the process. Through trial and observation, people gain clarity about what is effective and what is not. This clarity cannot be achieved through passive learning alone. It emerges through action. Feedback plays a crucial role in refining understanding. Every action produces a result, and that result provides valuable information. By paying attention to these outcomes, individuals can adjust their approach, strengthening what works and discarding what doesn't. This creates a continuous cycle of learning, where information is constantly tested and improved upon. Over time, this cycle leads to a more accurate and personalized understanding, one that is grounded in both knowledge and experience. Clarity also develops as information is simplified and organized. When people first encounter new ideas, they can feel complex or overwhelming. Breaking them down into clear, manageable concepts makes them easier to understand and apply. This process of simplification does not reduce the value of the information. Instead, it makes it more accessible and usable. It allows individuals to focus on what truly matters, rather than getting lost in unnecessary detail. Another layer of this transformation involves aligning information with personal values and goals. Not all information is equally relevant, and understanding requires discernment. By identifying what aligns with their own priorities, individuals can focus their attention more effectively. This alignment ensures that the information they internalize supports their long-term well-being rather than leading them in conflicting or unproductive directions. As understanding deepens, confidence begins to grow. Decisions are no longer based on guesswork or external pressure, but on a clear sense of what makes sense. This confidence is not rigid or closed-minded. It remains open to new information and willing to adapt. However, it is grounded in a solid foundation, making it less susceptible to sudden changes or trends. This stability allows individuals to navigate complex information with greater ease and assurance. Over time, the distinction between information and understanding becomes more apparent. Information is abundant and constantly changing, while understanding is developed and refined through effort. It is not something that can be acquired instantly, but something that grows through consistent engagement. This growth creates a deeper connection to what is learned, turning knowledge into something that is not only known, but lived and experienced in a meaningful way.